Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show. It's Expresso right here on SABC3. Now, lactose is a carbohydrate that's present in milk and other dairy products. It's known to cause digestive problems, with symptoms usually appearing 30 minutes to 2 hours after eating or drinking foods that contain lactose, such as diarrhea or bloating, to name just a few. Now, there is no cure, but there are ways to manage it. And here to help us unpack these ways is our trusted medical professional, Dr. Darren Green, to the rescue.
Morning.
How are you, Dr. Darren Green?
Good, shirt with that intro. Come on, rip it off. Good to have you, man. Good to have you.
Thank you.
Lactose intolerance.
Yes.
It's a subject that we have spoken about before, but I think people just don't understand it properly. I think that's why we are talking about it once again. For those who are unsure of the symptoms that they're experiencing, what is lactose intolerance?
Yeah, I think they must first know what lactose is.
Yes.
Lactose is a sugar. It's a sugar, it's a sugar, it's a sugar. It's a carbohydrate as part of that family.
Yeah.
And what lactose actually is, it's a more complex sugar that gets broken down into two smaller, finer sugars called glucose and galactose, like the galaxy, galactose.
Galactose.
So what's interesting is that some people, from birth, babies sometimes even while they're intrauterine, cannot manufacture the enzyme required to break it down from lactose into glucose and galactose. So that enzyme is called lactase, and they don't have that enzyme. That's a primary lactase deficiency. And that's very rare, extremely rare. The intolerance part of things are when people, as they get older, tend to have and develop less of that enzyme, and they have less available because the milk drinking years are considered your childhood years. And through a period of natural selection and development over time, more than 50% of people have lower lactase levels in adulthood than they do when they're children.
Wow.
So that's a natural process.
I feel like you've just answered my next question, because I was going to say, how does lactose intolerance come about? And you I think, answered it. It happens when you're either a baby or later on in adult life.
You can be born with that enzyme deficiency.
Oh, wow.
And later on, you can also destroy your ability to make lactase because they're made in highly specialized cells in the small intestine. Okay. So as the food goes through the stomach, as it exits the stomach, there's specialized cells that make it. Okay. And things like chemotherapy, things like infections of the gut and the small intestine can affect the ability of those cells to manufacture lactase.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because you've literally answered almost like everything. Remember, our lines are open, 021-430-9881. If you have a question around lactose intolerance, if you want to, but I want to touch on the fact that lactose, the lactase, that enzyme, why is it? Because if it's a natural selection, why are some people still okay with drinking dairy and those kind of things, and then you get the other part who is not, if it's a natural kind of thing?
Yes, that's a great question.
We'll get into that in just a little bit. Call us 021-430-9881 if you have a question for Dr. Darren Green, DG, our superhero this morning, around lactose intolerance.
It's my Feel Good Breakfast Show.
Right, we're back with Dr. Darren Green this morning for our health discussion around lactose intolerance, understanding it, what is it, why does it affect certain people and not others? There's so many questions. Dr. Darren, thank you very much for joining us. Interesting, you said earlier on, through a natural kind of process in life, we lose the ability to digest lactose because of the enzyme lactase. But why is it that some people are still okay with it, for their entire lives, and some people are just can't do it?
There's actually a genetic mutation that enables people to, a coded genetic mutation, where you have the bases on your DNA and where they're at specific gene locuses. So there's a coding system that we use, and there are gene mutations that occur where people obviously lose the ability to produce lactase throughout their life or later on in life, and that can be tested for actually. But besides that, if you think about it, there is a much stronger association with persistent lactose tolerance amongst people who were farmers in the past, who kept cows and were drinking milk into adult life, compared to our society, where a lot of milk is consumed during the first year of life, if you think about it. So there's a natural progression to lose your lactase enzymes as you get older in more than half the population.
We've actually got a call on the line. Kim is from Cape Town and has a question for Dr. Darren Green. Good morning, Kim. What's your question?
Good morning, guys. Lovely watching your show.
We love
Morning,
you.
My question to you is, I have woken up with bloating all my life. Not really all my life, but lately. I've just turned 50, and I want to know what is the actual difference between lactose intolerance and dairy intolerance. Because I'm a bit confused. I have been to the throat doctor about 2 years ago, and I had inflamed intestines. So I want to know, how do I know if I'm actually lactose intolerant or dairy intolerant?
Okay, so
Good question. Thanks, Kim.
absolutely simple question in terms of, so dairy, when we refer to dairy, we're basically referring to milk and cow's milk and products that are manufactured or made with cow's milk.
milk, yeah.
Remember, the components of dairy are multiple.
Yeah.
You've got proteins in dairy, okay,
Yes.
like casein and other amino acids. You have the fatty component of milk. And then obviously you have the glucose and the galactose, which is combined to form lactose, also in milk. So which one of those three things are you sensitive to? Well, it would be according to the amount of those components in the different types of products you're consuming. So there are tests that can be done that identify specifically lactose intolerance, things like a stool acidity test or a hydrogen breath test, for example. And also what happens in your symptoms when you consume high lactose content foods. When it comes to dairy allergy, that's a different component. People are normally allergic to the proteins, not the carbohydrates or the sugars, to the protein specifically in the milk or cow's milk, for example, and that can be identified also with specific testing.
Yeah. No wonder there's so many questions around being lactose intolerant and what goes with it.
It's crazy. Well, we will continue our chat with Dr. Darren Green after the break. It's all about lactose intolerance. I want to know from the doc afterwards, is lactose only in dairy products? And also, what foods should we be avoiding when we are lactose intolerant? All that more coming up after this.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show. It's Expresso right here on SABC3. Time to continue our chat about lactose intolerance. I want to know from the doctor, is lactose only found in dairy products?
Yes, it's a primary sweetener of all dairy, and I think that's what a lot of people don't know. Even breast milk has lactose in it.
Okay.
But that lactose is made in the human body, in the breast itself.
Okay. And then, of course, if we want to avoid having the symptoms of lactose intolerance, what food should we be avoiding?
Yeah, so you need to be aware of the content in terms of the volume or the amount of concentrated lactose in the different products out there. There are healthy alternatives to cow's milk, things like goat's milk, things like soy milk, things like the nut milks, like almond milk and rice milk, and even hemp milk are available out there for people that have sensitivity to high levels of lactose. You should actually go and look at the labels and also make sure you understand the content of protein available in the milk as well, because that's the primary difference between cow's milk and then looking at soy and rice milk and almond milk, etc.
Okay, so once you've established a lactose intolerance within yourself, what's the treatment options going forward? Is it as simple as cutting out dairy and lactose, basically?
For some people, it's a major thing. What happens is you might not be, as I say, intolerant to small amounts of lactose. So you would have to adjust the amount of lactose in whatever you're consuming. That's why I said change the milk type. Also look at the combinations of foods you're eating to see what gives you symptoms of bloating, diarrhea, abdominal cramps, etc., and lethargy. So you got to understand that you've got to then, with trial and error, get to a level where low amounts are actually quite acceptable and easy. Some people, it's a spectrum, so some people can tolerate small amounts.
Yeah. Can I ask you something? How severe can these symptoms get with regards to lactose intolerance?
You can feel like you're dying. The cramping, you can be brought to your knees in cramping, sweating, absolutely feeling lethargic, drained of all energy. You can start vomiting, having cramps. And when you go to the toilet, obviously, all the different things that you can witness there. I won't go into those now, it's early, but you can have really hectic stool changes as well.
But I mean, it's not physically damaging to your system, or is it?
No, well, it is. So what happens is that because the lactose isn't digested, it goes past the small intestine without those enzymes and goes into the colon, where the bacteria are waiting with open arms to act on it, and then they release hectic gases like hydrogen, carbon dioxide, and methane.
Yeah.
And that then can even be absorbed, some of it into the lungs, into the bloodstream, and then be exhaled in the lungs.
Yeah.
But that's why you feel those effects, all that gas.
But I mean, what I mean is it's got no long-term kind of repercussions going
Well, inflammation
forward,
on the gut certainly
Okay.
can predispose you to other conditions of the gut going down the line, and malabsorption syndromes where you can't then absorb other healthy sources of food.
Sure. Sure.
We had a question from social media, but I think that's still going to be coming through to us in a second. Is there a way to enjoy dairy without the discomfort?
Yeah, so you can actually get lactose-free products out there, and you have, as I mentioned, the alternatives often are supplemented with things like calcium and vitamins, because that's often the reason why we love drinking milk, for example.
Yeah.
But also remember that there are, in our society, alternatives that without the negative side effects.
Yeah. All right, here's the question. Shoo, what happened? It's a bit lopsided. Anyways, Anita says, I always struggled with abdominal pain and bloating after having dairy. I have stage 4 endometriosis, also spread to my bowels. I had a colon resection back in 2014. Since then, I can tolerate dairy well. My question, will it harm me in any way in the future? Can I proceed to consume it? Had colonoscopy recently and the doctor says it's all clear. I know dairy is prohibited on the endometriosis diet to prevent flare-ups. I love dairy.
Shame. No, well, it's about quality of life here. And also, she's had a colon resection. Remember what I just described?
Yeah.
When you develop the symptoms of bloating is when the actual lactose that's not digested hits the colon, and the bacteria act on it, emitting the gases.
Yeah.
So in this case, she's had a colon resected, which might be why she has less symptoms.
Okay.
Wonderful stuff. Dr. Darren Green, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
I
you.
feel like we're definitely beginning to understand this lactose intolerance even more. Last week we had Kanyam Bao on the show talking about the 21-day challenge. I saw someone on social media also asking us to advise on that. So we'll definitely do so. But Dr. Darren Green, you've done the most. You really have. Thank you so much. We'll see Dr. Darren Green next Tuesday, same time, same place. But now again, I want to hear about that 21-day challenge.